It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
Was Donald Trump the subject of an assassination attempt in a Washington hotel last night? Discuss? We certainly shall. And Al-Qaeda and whoever's behind them lost 1,000 militants today in the African state of Mali. But who is behind them and why? And tomorrow, at the Old Bailey, the old lady of British justice, 3 Ukrainian rent boys, massage parlour artistes, male models, are on trial for arsoning the British Prime Minister. Are we going to learn all? And are we going to like it? It's all coming up on the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned. Let's start with the last point first because, well, it tickles my fancy if it doesn't tickle yours. You know this only from the mother of all talk shows because no British newspaper or broadcaster has told you that tomorrow morning in the Old Bailey itself, no less, 3 Ukrainian rent boys will face charges connecting them to the arsoning of the British Prime Minister. Will we discover what these men held against Keir Starmer? Why his back door was so ineluctably attractive to them that they had to firebomb it. 2 back doors, 2 vehicles, neither of which they should have, on the face of it, anything to do with, any knowledge of. I mean, how do you find out the former residence of the British Prime Minister? How do you find out his former vehicle? Unless you've been in it, of course, in the past. That can happen to the best of us. Now, these men plead not guilty, and they are entitled to a fair trial, and I hope that they get it. They may be entirely innocent, as they claim with their not guilty plea of these heinous arsoning offences, the kind of thing that turns the stomach of plain-minded folk like me. It may be that these men have been falsely accused, but they have pleaded not guilty for a reason, and that is so that their side of the story can be aired in court. The bare-faced truth must be told. That's the principle of British justice, isn't it? Justice is blind, isn't it? The scales of justice cannot be weighed according to the status of one person to the case. So what are we going to find out? Well, in ordinary times, everybody would know everything there was to know, short of prejudicing their trial, about these three Ukrainian rent boys. I mean, there can't be that many Ukrainian rent boys in London. That three of them allegedly formed a concert party to firebomb the premises and the automobiles of a sitting British Prime Minister is an extraordinary story by any standards, but not by the standards of the British media, who plainly lack the moral fibre to deep dive into this story, or they have been ordered secretly by the government not to report. Now, there's a thing called a D notice in Britain, which an official of the Ministry of Defence, no less, comes along and hands you physically a notice, after which you may not publish anything on a story at pain of imprisonment yourself. Now, if anybody came along to me and handed me a D notice, I'd be showing it to you on the camera right now because, hey, I believe in freedom of the press. I believe in freedom of speech. No matter who it's for, no matter who it's against. It's the only way we can do things, you know. If we allow the state to regulate what stories we're allowed to know, then we'll end up knowing far less than we need to know. Need to know in order to judge the wisdom of the people who are ruling us. And the loser in that will be us, all of us, the public interest. So if they had given me a D notice in the public interest, I would have told you everything about it. But let me assume for a moment that there is no D notice and that there is merely a conspiracy in the British media to ignore a story as big as this one. In ordinary times, as I say, with any other victim, we'd know everything about these three individuals. We'd know where they were living, why they were living in London. We'd know what they had been doing in London. The interviews would be in the can of their former customers, clients. People would testify as to their massage skills, as to their male modelling attributes. We'd know lots about them. Sure, stuff might have been asterisked, might have been pixelated. They might not have shown you the full, ugly truth, but you'd know far more than nothing, which is what you precisely know unless you have been watching the mother of all talk shows, and to be fair, one or two outlets on Twitter. That's if Elon Musk doesn't get to it first. My own feeling is that these men have a personal grudge against Keir Starmer. It may be that they acted, if they did act, out of that personal grudge. And I don't know about you, but I'm rather keen to know what that personal grudge might be. Because I want to know what kind of man our Prime Minister is. Although I'm beginning to get quite a clear idea about that, as are you. He's the type of Prime Minister that thinks it was a good idea to wreck his entire premiership and the entire future of his party just to get the paragon of moral virtue, Peter Mandelson, back into public life. Mandelson sacked twice from two different Labour cabinets and thought to be in such disgrace that he could only hang around with the dodgiest of lobbyists. But Starmer was determined to get him back, and I'm rather keen to know why. Was it cash? Well, he did meet with Palantir, with Peter Mandelson, and we only know that because of social media. He didn't declare it, as he was under the ministerial code perfectly obliged to do. Not entitled to do, he was obliged to do, and he has not done it. He met Palantir and its sinister boss with the sinister Peter Mandelson and didn't tell anyone about it. That is grounds for dismissal as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in and of itself. But when you lie to Parliament that the vetting process for Peter Mandelson was perfectly normal and had been passed, if not with flying colours, had definitely been passed, then that's an automatic sacking offence or a resignation offence, as we, as former members of the British Parliament like me, well know, is the formulation, the gentlemanly formulation that the British normally use. It's a resignation matter if you are found to have lied to the British Parliament. Well, we've already found that Keir Starmer lied multiple times on the Peter Mandelson affair. And that's another reason why he should no longer be the Prime Minister. But there are many, many others. Dan Hodges, I think it was, in the Daily Mail, the biggest selling British newspaper today, makes the point that Keir Starmer is so otherworldly, he has no idea how universally loathed he is. He can read the polls, I'm sure. He can already read that he is the most unpopular British Prime Minister of all time. But he appears to think that his Labour members of Parliament are loyally behind him. Well, I'm here to tell you that they are not, and that we will have a new Prime Minister right after the local government elections on the 10th of May. And good riddance, Keir Starmer. You were bad rubbish, and we will all be well rid of you. As to the outcome of the trial, well, who knows what it will be? Who knows if it will even happen? Who knows if an offer they can't refuse will be made to the Ukrainian rent boys to avoid what could be a highly embarrassing interlude, as was the events in the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. last night. I first want to make this point to you. It's a controversial one. There was no assassination attempt on Donald Trump. The gunman, such as he was, about whom more in a minute, was on an entirely different floor of the hotel to the Washington White House press correspondence dinner, and the man, Trump, and Vance, and Hegseth, and Rubio, and their wives and concubines galore were all in the hall, in the floor below where the alleged assassin was. Sure, it was spectacular enough that shots are fired in a hotel where the president is in the floor just downstairs, but the shots were fired by the American Secret Service. The alleged assassin does not appear to have been shot, at least according to the photographs of him prone on the floor and naked that I have seen. If he was shot, he's that peculiar bloodless personality who didn't actually shed any of the red stuff. It's true that he had a gun, but it was a shotgun, not an automatic rifle, that would normally be the weapon of choice of an assassin. He had a handgun, and he had 2 knives. So he clearly was a dangerous man, just not dangerous to Donald Trump. But I'm waiting for Donald Trump to appear in the morning, patched up with bandages and sticking plasters, like he did at Butler after the extraordinary attempt to kill him then, which shed blood, all right. It was all over his ear and his face, but there was no hole in his ear, even though he put a plaster on the next day, which then miraculously disappeared. What point am I trying to make here? That this is a very strange event indeed. First of all, the alleged assassin is not your usual profile of these types of people. Lee Harvey Oswald, he was not. James Earl Ray, he was not. Sirhan, he was not. The man now held and to be arraigned tomorrow in a Washington courtroom with attempting to assassinate Donald J. Trump was a award-winning tutor, a Caltech graduate, an engineer at the top of his profession. Why he would decide to throw it all away on a madcap kamikaze attempt to get down one floor and get through multiple FBI security points and then get through the hall and get a shot away against Donald Trump is not immediately clear. I'm wondering if there's more to this story than meets the eye, because I've been studying the body language of the most important personnel involved all day. I've been studying Donald Trump's smug, I can only call it that, smug looks after the whole event went down. And bear in mind, I repeat, this didn't happen on the floor of the hotel that he was on. He did hear shots from upstairs, but those shots were Secret Service shots that he heard. He was looking terrifically pleased with himself, as was Pete Hegseth. Melania looked shocked, but one doesn't know if that's just because Donald Trump was sitting next to her. The Secretary of Defense, the Vice President, they didn't look shocked at all. And there are other strange things. J.D. Vance was bundled out of the hall before Donald Trump was. What does that tell us? Why would you rescue the Vice President before you rescued the President? Not that there was any need to rescue either. Donald Trump fell down as he was being rescued. Surrounded by 7 Secret Service agents, he literally fell to the floor. Why? Was he going to attempt he'd been shot again? Was he going to claim, rather, that he'd been shot again? If not, why did he fall? Is he now in the habit of falling? Are we now in Joe Biden territory? Why did the president fall down to the ground as he was being led off the stage? All of these things we'll discuss with a man who knows these kind of things. Larry Johnson, formerly of the CIA, if you can ever be formerly of the CIA, will be up in just a couple of minutes. So let me turn now to the events in Mali. They are dark events indeed. Fully 1,000 Al-Qaeda, ISIS militants were gunned down today by the brave soldiers of the Mali armed forces and the Wagner Group, or now called the Africa Corps, originating here in this parish in Moscow. They have an agreement with the legitimate government of Mali to defend them from Islamist maniacs whose idea of warfare is to go around cutting people's heads off, slitting their throats and eating their hearts. Now, I want to see every last Al-Qaeda and ISIS militant in the world lying on the floor just like those in Mali today. I'm not interested in them. I'm interested in how Al-Qaeda can muster an army that can lose 1,000 dead, presumably therefore 3,000 wounded, and how they've been able to assemble an army of thousands, an army which entered Mali today with the clear purpose of overthrowing the Malian government. Why? Because the Mali government has kicked out the French. The Mali government has nationalized their own gold reserves, from which they were earning a pittance before, but are now earning everything, now that the French have been kicked out of the country. They are taking into public ownership, on behalf of the people of Mali, the natural treasure, rare earths and other minerals that lie beneath their feet. It's the kind of thing that gets you overthrown by Western governments. It's the kind of thing that led to the reinstatement of the Shah and his later overthrow by the Ayatollah Khomeini. That's all that the Prime Minister of Iran was trying to do when he was overthrown by the British and the Americans in 1953. But the Mali president is not alone. He is in a federation in which Niger and Burkina Faso, which we, Gayatri and me, hope to visit later in the year. That federation has kicked out the French, brought in Russian military help, and is transforming the social and economic position of its own people. And some people are not prepared to take no for an answer. Among them is the French. The French newspaper of record said today, only France can help Mali get rid of this infestation of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. But in order for France to help them, they'll have to ask forgiveness from little Macron, who, by the way, is leaving politics next year. A nation mourns, I'm sure, from north to south of the great country of France. They have to ask forgiveness from Macron so that France can help them get rid of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. I don't know about you, but I smell, what's the French word for rat? I smell a rat in that. Is it chat? No, that's a cat. What's the word for rat? Somebody help me. I smell a big French rat in this. And we already know from Syria and else places and other places. Le rat. It's just rat with le in front of it. I smell le rat from the Elysee in Mali today. Now, of course, we already know from multiple places that Al-Qaeda and ISIS, whoever formed them, and I'll come to that in a minute, are working for the Western countries that claim to fear and loathe them as much as it's possible to do. We know that the French people suffered mightily at the hands of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So did the Belgians, so did the British, so did the Germans at Christmas market after Christmas market. But that didn't stop all of those governments covertly assisting ISIS and Al-Qaeda to power, amongst other places, in Syria. And then recognizing the ISIS-Al-Qaeda government in Syria. And then welcoming, even though he wouldn't shake Anna Baerbock's hand. Well, if you knew where she'd been, you might not shake her hand either. But Anna Baerbock and the rest of the German government were absolutely delighted to welcome the ISIS-Al-Qaeda chief, the so-called Al-Jolani, Ashara, and call him Mr. President. Even though I have seen him holding up severed heads with my own eyes. So the ambivalence, is that a French word? The ambivalence of Western governments towards ISIS and Al-Qaeda is well charted. So I'm going to make an allegation here. I'm blaming you, Macron. I'm saying you, Macron, were behind the ISIS-Al-Qaeda supergrowth, which has led to them being able to infiltrate thousands of soldiers to try to overthrow the government of Mali. I'm going to make another prediction. You're going to fail because you're just a little failure. Even your husband knows that. It's the mother of all talk shows with me, George Galloway, and Larry Johnson coming up next. Stay tuned. Full marks to you for your dogged persistence and your quiet and dignified insistence that you were right and I was wrong. I don't actually recall the clash that we had, but I would have to say that you are being proven right, and I am being proven to have hoped for things that have not transpired. Because I said all along, I repeated it 100 times, that the big enchilada, World War III, an intensification of American involvement in the Ukraine war, was more likely to happen under the Democrats, under President Kamala Harris, than under a renewed President Trump. And I'll go to the stake defending that position.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Of course, Madame Macron is not Macron's husband. She's just a very nice but very old lady, and she packs one hell of a punch. We're asking the poll today, is the Trump cartel guilty of insider trading? Is the Pope a Catholic? Well, you can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, and on the patreon.com. I don't know if you can yet vote on the YouTube stream because it's not on my screen, but you normally can, and I'm hoping that you can this evening. Is the Trump cartel guilty of insider trading? My God, 40,000 people have voted on this poll already, and I'm only just now announcing it. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the international number is 0044 203 966 2625. Larry Johnson's a CIA veteran, but he's also the founder of the highly distinguished Berg Associates. He knows everything about war and about politics. I know that because he's a good friend of mine. Larry Johnston, thanks very much for joining us. If you don't mind, I'd like to start with the events in Washington last night. What can you tell us about this apparently crazed suicide attack that a California engineer was prepared to make on members of the American administration?
Well, Brother George, I always appreciate the invite, and thank you for the chance to chat. The story stinks to high heaven. Let me explain some of the issues, and let me emphasize this is not just my opinion. I've got a buddy who ran Reagan's security detail after Reagan was shot. Experienced Secret Service officer. He actually set up the training protocols that Secret Service is supposed to adhere to, which they are no longer following. Now, let me emphasize that. So the first thing that caught my eye, the first person that's taken off the stage, so you got gunfire outside of the ballroom, it's not inside the ballroom. The first person to be taken off stage was J.D. Vance. And I look at it and go, what in God's name is going on? The protocol, the standard, the requirement is the president. Get the president. Everybody else can die. The president, that's who you save. That's what Secret Service is supposed to be trained to do. They didn't do that. They take off J.D. Vance. So you're going, okay, what's going on? Trump initially, everybody else is ducking behind tables. He's sitting there calmly looking around like, did he know this was going to happen? Was this staged? I believe it was staged. And we'll get into that. The second thing is the failure of the security perimeter. that it was not properly set up. So the way this should be done is you have a perimeter outside the hotel, okay? So you set the first layer that nobody gets past that first layer unless they have a right to be in that hotel. They can show that they're a guest or that they got an invitation. Otherwise, nobody gets in. All right, so this guy had gotten in. He was a guest. But then you've got an entrance into the area where the ballroom is. And I don't recall. I've been in that hotel before, but I don't recall if there's just one or if there are two. But regardless, you immediately identify what are the access points, and you cover those. And you cover those in such a way that you got a magnetometer, which means you detect metal detector, and then you have armed personnel standing there behind in the event that somebody tries to run through like this guy did. Because if they do, you then shoot them. You don't tackle them. You don't try to talk them down. You shoot them. And then you should have had another security checkpoint. We've learned, according to several people that attended, that at no time were they required to show an ID and the ticket to be at that event. Now, the other thing that's curious, and this tells me that this was planned with help, that this guy who had the shotgun, he had assistance because he traveled from California. Now, I had assumed that he got on an airplane, which means if you get on an airplane, you have to fill out forms to say that I'm carrying a firearm. It has to be properly locked and secured. And so there's a way to do it, but they go through a formal procedure. He took the train. There is no security. There is no security on the train. So, he got that weapon there. And now look at here. Look at his body. Do you see any bullet holes? No. Do you see any blood? No. Do you see anybody administering first aid? No. He was not shot. How in the hell does that happen? When you come sprinting through with a gun, firing at people, there aren't enough Secret Service and Metropolitan Police from D.C. and probably some other federal law enforcement in the area. They all got guns. They should have been out filling him up with lead that, he would have been sufficient to be an anchor on a boat. Instead, you saw him running away from those guys that were shooting at him. You don't see any bullet holes. And the reason I know that he didn't get shot anywhere else, in that picture, you don't see a single emergency medical technician applying any kind of tourniquet, pressure. Let's say that if he got shot in the legs, they should be trying to stop bleeding there and treat that. They didn't do that. So that's why I say this thing stinks to high heaven. I think this guy had been encouraged by someone else to do this, that he didn't know he was being used, but he got put in a position where he was used, but everybody else, key leaders, knew that this was going to happen. And this was designed, I think, for the intent to try to create more support fantasy for Donald Trump. See right there, J.D. Vance is out and Trump's still sitting over there. Oh, we forgot the president. My God, what level of incompetence is this?
Well, we have not conferred, but I agree with every single word of that and more. The man is not wounded for the reasons you gave, and so the question is, why is he not wounded? A man sprints through an armed cordon and fires, because we know that a Secret Service man was shot, though his vest mercifully stopped the shot, but not sufficiently so that he didn't have to go to hospital. He was actually in hospital, the Secret Service man, but the assailant was not shot. Question, why? How do you assemble, as we have witnesses, testimony, how do you assemble a shotgun in a hotel where the President of the United States is? Now, these questions are all germane, Larry, because many of the same questions arose in the Butler case. about which
Right,
more and more
right.
people are becoming suspicious. Am I not right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's not the assembly of the shotgun that bothers me. That's easy to do, and even I'm not sure what they did confirm. He bought a shotgun. He used buckshot, but I would like to know. Was it a Remington? I think it's the 870 is the most common, but when you come out of your hotel room, you're carrying the shotgun. He didn't have it concealed. How can you walk through that hotel? Again, this gets up to Secret Service procedure, where every coming off that elevator to go towards the event area, there should have been 2 Secret Service agents there monitoring the crowd. Now, George, I've had personal experience of how bad the security is around Donald Trump. Back in November of 2021, I got an invite to attend this. They had some gala for Lincoln's Day. It was the Republican homosexuals that supported Trump. That was the whole thing. So I went with my wife. I'm carrying concealed. I carry a concealed gun on me. I drove on to Mar-a-Lago with my firearm. We had locked it into the glove box, and Secret Service agent stops me and says, "Do you have any firearms in the car?" I said, "Well, yes, we do. We got it locked up here." He goes, "Oh, you can't have those on the property." And I said, "Okay, I will." I let my wife off and the other people that were with us, and they went in, and I drove back to the hotel, put them in a lockbox, drove back, come in. The guy sees me and waves. "So you don't have firearms?" No. Didn't check me. Didn't ask to see. Well, go on through. We went in. We didn't go through a metal detector that night. Not a single metal detector in sight. It's a miracle that Trump hadn't been shot then. So, like I said, and the Secret Service was running that. And I talked to one of the agents afterwards, saying basically, "What's wrong with you guys? I mean, you're not really providing any kind of security screen around. This time he's the former president then, but so I've seen it firsthand how bad they are at their job."
Now, when I first heard, I woke up to the news because I'm in Moscow, so a good number of hours ahead of you. When I woke up to the news, my first thought was the assailant a transvestite Shiite called Fidel? And I was all day waiting for some kind of link to Cuba, or a link to Iran, or a link to the furries or the transsexual community. But he turns out to be of a rather, well, how shall I put it, elevated pedigree than any of that. He's a tutor of the year in his previous college. He's an engineering graduate. By all accounts, a well-read, highly educated guy. What do we know about him, Larry?
Yeah, beyond that, they've got a video of him. He was he designed brakes for a wheelchair, something that would bring a wheelchair to a stop and protect while protecting the occupant. That's why I think that this guy was a patsy. And what do I mean by a patsy? So we just had a lawsuit filed, or criminal charges filed against the Southern Poverty Law Center, because they were paying neo-Nazis and KKK to go out into events, interfere, create a disturbance, so it would appear that was a right-wing disturbance, when in fact the SPLC they were the ones behind it. FBI has done the same thing. FBI encouraged 4 guys up in Michigan a few years back to try to assassinate the governor. They provided the suggestions, they provided some of the funding, and these guys got convinced to try to do it. So I'm saying this is a technique that's not just confined to one element, but we've seen the government do it. And I wouldn't put it past me that the FBI was involved in putting this guy up to this, because the fact that they told him, take the train, that way you can carry a firearm and a shotgun onto a train, nobody's going to check you. There's no security protocol for that. And so, that tells me that there was outside assistance in this guy getting there. But he really didn't have a plan. And, I think he may have got the assurance, if you do this, we won't kill you. And he didn't get killed. He should have been killed.
No.
Because when you're running like that,
of course,
and you've got people in front of you and behind you with firearms, man, you draw, you stop the threat. You don't tell halt, none of that. You shoot to stop the threat.
Well, let's turn to the bigger picture, Larry. We must. Will they, won't they invade Iran? Is Iran in talks with the US government or not? The Iranians say not, and yet Aragji, who just arrived in Moscow, by the way, Aragji goes to Pakistan, leaves Pakistan, goes back to Pakistan, then he goes to Oman. It's all rather confusing to me, but you, with your consultancy hat on, you must be better informed. What's going on?
Well, I know that there are plans to launch an attack on Iran, except the people in that theater, it's called Central Command. So when I say CENTCOM, Central Command Theater, the general that commands the air operations and the general that commands the ground operations, they both are telling their boss, which is called the Ground Force Commander, or the Joint Force Commander, the JFC, they're telling him, no, we shouldn't do this. It's not going to accomplish something. It's going to create a lot more problems for us. Joint Forces Commander agrees. So he's reporting back up his chain of command, and they're telling the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, even though Kane he can't command them. The only commands come through the president, but he is the president's military advisor, and they're telling Kane, no way, and so that's what has delayed. I actually fully expected the attack to be underway within the next hour, but apparently the resistance from the military commanders on the ground who are saying, no, stop, that's having an effect. So we'll see how that goes. The Iranians, as you know, and you've covered on your with the various guests that you've had, they're willing to make a deal. Iran doesn't want to go to war, but they're no longer going to allow themselves to be, if you will, the abused spouse. They're no longer going to accept getting beaten, getting threatened, getting robbed. They're not going to do it. They demand respect. And now they've earned it because they got the Strait of Hormuz closed. And despite U.S. claims, we got it blockaded, and Iran is demanding that the blockade be lifted, the reality of that blockade is the United States does not have enough ships in the area to actually provide an effective blockade. And they can't get too close to the Iranian coast because the Iranians have these things called coastal defense cruise missiles, short-range ballistic missiles, and drones that could actually hit and sink those ships. So the U.S. Navy stand off. They recognize that we don't want to get in that close. So Iran's willing to accept the deal, but the essence of the deal for Iran is they're going to continue to control the Strait of Hormuz and will charge people for using it. They want all of the sanctions lifted, both the U.S. sanctions and all the indirect ones to UN and other parties, and they want their assets unfrozen and leave us alone. Stop attacking us. That's their bottom line.
So it's not impossible that no war, no peace could prevail for the rest of Donald Trump's term. It'll be massively damaging to the world economy because how long has it been now? 56 days, I think I read. Yeah. The straits have been closed. So all that gas, all that oil is not on the market, driving up the price. I
58
presume when the market
days.
opens tomorrow, 58 days,
Yeah,
there you go. I
58
presume
days.
when the market opens, when the market opens tomorrow, the oil price is going to rocket.
Yeah, no, it's we're a week or two away from a complete potential collapse of the system, because they keep the news media keeps focused on the Brent futures, but that's not what you focus on. You focus on what's the actual cost of the oil when it's being delivered.
Yeah, exactly.
And Alex he runs a site called Reporterfly, and he's based in China. He said that it's important to remember that when those tankers started coming out of the Strait of Hormuz on February 28th, they're moving at the rate of like a person riding a bicycle. And we're not talking about a speed racer. We're talking about a regular person riding a bicycle doing maybe 10 kilometers an hour. So those ships sail very slowly, and it's only been within the last week or two that the last of those ships have finally reached their destination. Meanwhile, what was flowing out on 28 February has not been flowing out now we're going into week 8. And that means there is this incredible shortage around the world. And that shortage is now going to start hitting. In the past, people have had some reserves, and they could pretend that there was not the shortage, but now the shortage is going to become real. Alex, I think, is well positioned to understand this. He said the financial crisis we had in 2008 will look like a minor rainstorm compared to the hurricane that's going to hit once people realize they've got significant shortages of oil and there are no alternatives. And it's not just oil, it's the liquid natural gas, it's the urea for fertilizer, it's the helium for computer chips and MRIs, and it's sulfuric acid across the board. Massive global disruption, contraction of the economy. This is people will not know what is going to hit them. This gives Iran tremendous power going forward.
And of course, the Europeans, speaking of patsies, we're the biggest patsy of them all. We, in order to please Joe Biden, cut off Russian gas, Russian oil, and now we can't get Persian Gulf oil or gas.
Yeah.
That means no gas, no oil, means no industry, means no economy, means serious trouble in Europe, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Well, Europe's become a caricature. It's like that old Monty Python, the movie, The Holy Grail, where you had the Black Knight, and he lost one arm and then both arms and then both legs, and he's still wanting to fight. That's Europe. They've been completely cut to pieces, but they still think they have a fighting chance. They don't.
Yes, it's called kamikaze in other words. Last point, I know that it's way down the batting order now of news items, but is there anything happening in the US over the Ukraine war? People are still losing their lives. The economies of the two countries are still being severely damaged. Millions of Ukrainians have left the country. Is anybody even paying attention to the Ukraine war now?
Yeah, no, that's you look at them and you say Ukraine. Here where I am in Florida, we have what are called sandhill cranes. So there's more attention paid to the sandhill cranes, which is a big bird, than Ukraine, which that has gone off everybody's wish list. Hey, we've used up all of our missiles in Iran. We don't have any more to give to Ukraine. They're on their own now.
Well, apart from the European taxpayer who just agreed to give them 90 billion euros that we don't have, to buy American weapons that you don't have, to put in the hands of Ukrainian soldiers that they don't have. I mean, talk about money laundering.
Yeah. Well, George, you've always had a gift for summarizing things in such a colorful, succinct manner, and there you did it again. You nailed it, my friend.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank
God
you.
bless you, and lovely to see you again and to benefit from your wisdom. Thank you, Larry Johnson, CIA veteran and founder of the highly respected Berg Associates. How's the poll doing? Is the Trump cartel guilty of insider trading? Do bears do it in the woods these days? Yes, 99, 94, 97, and 97% insider trading. Well, now, this is noteworthy, therefore, only for the quantum. If you want to make your point of view known, make sure you vote before towards the end of the show. I can tell you that although 33,000 people have voted on YouTube, only 288 have voted on Twitter, even though I have a kick in the ass out of 1 million followers. I've got nearly 1 million followers, but only 288 of them were prepared to vote on my poll. Let me take a quick break, and then I'm going to my old hometown of Dumfries. Stay tuned. Fabulous. Two great calls in a row there. One from California, one from Orlando. I think that Japan is walking on extremely thin ice in the provocations that they are currently allowing the US to manipulate them into making. I've spent a lot of time in China. I was there just a couple of weeks ago. There is visceral feelings about Japan in China. Of all of the countries of the world, China will never, ever, ever, ever forgive what Japan did to the Chinese people. They murdered more than 20 million Chinese. The war, which for us started in 1939 and for you started considerably more than that, further on than that. Japan invaded China in 1931 and didn't leave until their defeat in 1945. They further invaded other parts of China in 1936, and they killed 20 million Chinese people.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's go to Dumfries and Galloway. You can tell why I moved there. It's Jay who wants to talk about ISIS, Al-Qaeda in Mali. Most welcome, Jay. What would you like to say?
Something that you spoke about. I think that the current extremist problems in Mali are being supported by, I wouldn't be surprised, France and other European countries. It's something that the West has been very good at through the ages, with Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran, Patrice Lumumba in Congo, Salvador Allende in Chile. And this looks like another attempt to try and destabilize a country that basically wanted France to observe its sovereignty. And Western countries only like puppet regimes that give them resources at a very cheap rate, at a rate that's beneficial to the buying country rather than the citizens of the country from where the resources come from. And this just will carry on. And I'm glad that the junta in Mali is standing up to France. And I'm glad that they're finding their own ways of dealing with the problem. If he feels that the Wagner group is much more, much to their liking. What right has Macron and the EU got to criticize them? It's a sovereign nation. They don't seem to criticize all the international laws that have been broken by Israel and America. So why should they worry about them hiring, mercenaries from the Wagner Group, Russians? So it's the hypocrisy,
Well, I wish
the double standards.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is off the charts. And of course, France were supposedly helping, not just Mali, but all the countries of the AES against ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Yet, miraculously, they were never able to defeat them. They were never able to find them. They certainly never killed 1 million of them. 1,000 of them in a single day's conflict, as the Malian government forces and the Russian Africa Corps did this very day. I don't know if you saw the pictures, Jay, but it was quite gruesome. They didn't mess around. If you turned up with ISIS Al-Qaeda intent as part of an insurgency, you're going to be lying face down in the dirt.
That's why I'm saying that I think France was holding Mali at ransom and pretending to deal with the extremists. But in reality, they were probably backing them and finding a foothold in Mali so that they could get the resources out of Mali dirt cheap. And this has been played, it's a scene that's been played over and over again. And most Western people are so ignorant of this. They won't learn their own history, the real history, so that they can better understand why so many countries resent us.
The Chinese just did a massive deal today with Mozambique, which equally, miraculously, has an ISIS Al-Qaeda problem in the north of their country. China's going to build railways and motorways, highways, bridges, all to improve the infrastructure in Mozambique for the purposes of boosting trade between Mozambique and China. I wouldn't, if I were one of these African presidents, I'd rather hire forces from Russia or China to help me, wouldn't you?
With you entirely. And don't forget, Mozambique was the war in Mozambique between the MPLA, the FNLA, the UNITA. It was an orchestrated war by the American CIA and the South African forces. It was designed to make sure that Mozambique did not give assistance to the ANC and was in no way, shape, or form, able to do so. And now, I mean, you look at.
Go on.
Just saying, when you look at the state of Mozambique, how long it's taken them to get to a point where, it's only because China has looked at Africa. And I'm not saying the Chinese are not capable of doing similar things, but not to that extent. China has a better understanding of what is required in Africa than the sheer greed of American and European Western governments. So yes, I'd rather have the Russians and the Chinese.
I would, I recall those days, that struggle very well. I was deeply involved in it personally. Thank you very much, Jay. In Dumfries, very clever man indeed. Is the Trump cartel guilty of insider trading? You can vote yes or no on all the usual portals. You can also leave comments on YouTube. Just scan the QR code now and leave a comment on the YouTube stream, and I'll try and read it out. Kevin Brennan Business says, another fake assassination attempt. You guys need better writers. Hollywood ain't what it used to be, Kev. Dan the Joliffe says, I read your Twitter post about the Trump shooting being a psyop and was wondering if you think this about the other Trump shootings. Well, I'm becoming very much more suspicious about Butler than I ever was. Jimmy Dean, great name, sends $4.99. Thanks, Jimmy. Fake. It was really it was really run as a training exercise. If it's a training exercise, it's only known to Trump and his circle. And Gary Proctor, 1893, says, yes, the Trump cartel is guilty of insider trading, not only with oil, but tariffs, sanctions, and war to manipulate markets, ever since taking power. And Paul Bedson of my own Workers' Party of Britain says Goldfinger Trump would kill thousands of Lebanese to seize the gas fields. Last call before the break then, also in Scotland, where John wants to talk about Trump and Starmer. John, I'm all ears. Go ahead.
Hiya. Thanks for taking my call, George.
Hi. Welcome.
Basically, I've watched you from your Parliament days, and I've always admired the way you put things. This is like your last interviewer said to you.
Thank you.
You have a great way of summing things up, straight to the point.
Thanks.
And if we had more people like you in power, this BS wouldn't be happening these days. But anyway, as we see in America, I mean, it's like a complete comedy show. Police Academy stuff you see out there. And as I said, and your thing about Starmer and the Rent Boys stuff, I mean, it's incredible how much of the public, the average public, the average Joe and Jane, don't hear about this stuff and how this story's been covered up. I mean, it's incredible. If
Absolutely.
that was any normal person in the street, I mean, there would be splashed.
Of course, even if it was thee or me, John. This is the Prime Minister of the country we're talking about. He was subject, allegedly, to multiple arsoning. And there's 3 guys on trial for it, and nobody talks about it. Nobody has told the British public that this case is tomorrow in the Old Bailey. I mean, it's not exactly obscure, but they're trying to make it obscure. Makes you suspicious, John, doesn't it?
Oh, sure. But tomorrow, it's a reckoning day. Let's see what the public get to hear about it. I mean, it's incredible.
Well, if you stay tuned here, you'll hear plenty about it on Wednesday and on Sunday if the trial lasts. John, don't forget, you've got a chance of voting on the 10th of May for me, for the Workers' Party. If you're in an area where we're standing, I'd appreciate your support. Thanks a lot for that, John in Scotland. Now, a big shout out to tonight's supporters who've been backing Moats via the website. Heather Liardet, forgive me, Heather, Liardet, Heather Liardet. Much obliged to you, Heather. Jim, M.N. Big, Don Stewart, and Lynn Timperley. I see your name regularly, Lynn. You're most generous and helpful to us. I'm very grateful to all of you, and to all of you who are going to donate tonight just by going to moats.tv and pressing the Donate Now button. Let me take a quick break because I've got a top guest, another top guest coming up right after it. It's retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Aguilar. We've got a CIA veteran and a retired Lieutenant Colonel with a great history and quite a degree of eloquence coming up right after the break. Stay tuned. Let me say that you can listen to the audio-only version of Moats on our Moats podcast, and the numbers on that are going through the roof. Just search Moats with George Galloway on Apple, Spotify, Google, or whichever platform you listen to your podcasts on. In recent weeks, it's been the #1 political podcast in Benin, Jordan, the Gambia, Qatar, Jamaica, Ghana, Iceland, Malaysia, Singapore, Sweden, and the Philippines. #1 political podcast in all those countries. Truly, truly phenomenal. Do you know that BBC News has lost 40% of its audience in the last 2 years? It's official. And of course, that is the sensible thing to do. But to get people to tune in and change course and listen to a radically different point of view, is even more difficult. But it's happening. And the numbers that we are racking up are now in their millions.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Is the Trump cartel guilty of insider trading? Maybe make 50,000 votes on this, Get voting on the usual places. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Aguilar is an American hero. He's a military man, sure. He's seen plenty of military action. That means he knows about military affairs. But he's also a man with a conscience who knows an unjust war when he sees one. Of course, the blessed St. Augustine was the man who developed the theory of a just war, and that led sundry Trumpists in the administration to accuse the current Pope of not understanding St. Augustine's concept of a just war, even though the current Pope is formally the head of the Augustinian order. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Aguilar, welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. Before I take you on to real wars, was that a phony war in Washington last night? Larry Johnson thinks it stinks to high heaven, the attempted assassination against members of the Trump administration. What do you think?
I agree with Larry in that not only does it stink to high heaven, it was entirely bizarre and what is akin to a high school play. When you look at who was present, the administration, Trump had his cast of clowns and his cabinet of idiocracies all convened at the Washington Hilton. What's ironic is that the Secret Service has a very robust security plan for that specific hotel, because if we all recall, in March of 1981, that's where the same hotel that Ronald Reagan was shot in. That's why it's called the Hilton Hinckley, because of John Hinckley that fired those shots. So the fact that the security was so lackluster, unprofessional, the shooter was able to penetrate to the depth that he did with seemingly no objective, with a shotgun, a pistol, and a knife. Unless he was Charlie Bronson or trying to reenact something from the, from a bad B-type action movie. This was the setup. This is another attempt for Donald Trump to bring attention during very low polling, and it brings a lot of question and a lot of scrutiny onto what actually happened in Butler. I think this shows another hand of that same deck of cards.
Well, you see, Lieutenant Colonel, I'm now increasingly suspicious about Butler, though I was not at the beginning. And don't forget, 2 people lost their lives in that incident. A firefighter in the crowd behind Trump, and of course the alleged assassin himself. And I began to get suspicious when, frankly, I know more about almost anybody in the United States than I know about the guy that came within a whisker of killing now President Trump on the field at Butler. The media just completely forgot about him. We never learned what his motive was. We never learned with whom he was in concert. We learned virtually nothing about it, which made me inherently suspicious. And I don't think that's going to change in the Butler case. Although we already know more about the fella from last night than we do about the fella from nearly 2 years ago. Why is that?
Well, I think that last night, obviously this was during the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Also, what's interesting is that Donald Trump, as the president, has never attended one of these events. Last night was the first time he attended. So I think there was a lot of attention on the event itself because he was attending. We also had so many members of the cabinet in attendance. This is a press event usually some of the inside circle of the East Wing, or excuse me, the West Wing of the White House. You usually don't have all of the secretaries and the advisors, and this was really turned into a show. So I think that this was an event that the administration, those involved in the knowing or at least having an understanding of what might have occurred, really wanted this to be showcased. If you look, the president had a press conference ready to go back at the White House with him and the A.G. Blanchard and the Kash Patel, all ready to go for this elaborate press conference within minutes of this incident happening. You can't tell me that was not already pre-set up to do this. So I think last night was staged to be very much an extraordinary showcase, and the individual involved, again, to showcase this at a time when the president is on a precipice of a decision on furthering the war in Iran. The war in Iran is becoming increasingly unpopular. And also last night, within hours before this event, we also had the Secretary of Defense in Mali assassinated by JNIM, which is also a stain on American foreign policy, because we, along with France, have also had a lot of involvement in Mali and the protection of Mali as a state. So I think there's just a lot that the administration really wanted to take away from the eyes of the world and put it back on some extraordinary event here in the United States and blame it on an individual that can be painted as to one case being an extremist, or to the other case being what the administration is likely going to paint as a left-wing woke individual, and see how dangerous woke is. I think they're already starting to paint that picture with his tarnishing his background, and it's gained all the headlines here in the United States from last night through today.
Sure. I mean, all those cabinet members in one place makes you wonder who was their designated survivor. Maybe Baron Trump would be the last man standing. But turning to the bigger picture, Tony, I want to ask you about Mali first. It's grabbed my attention heavily for two reasons. First of all, how can ISIS and Al-Qaeda maintain an army of so many thousands of fighters in a country that is dirt poor? Shouldn't be, because France stole all their money for centuries, but is dirt poor. The most people in the country are dirt poor. How do you maintain an army of that size when your ideology is the most extreme theocratic extremism? And secondly, why did Western countries, when they were protecting Mali, supposedly, not manage to make a dent in this, while the Africa Corps and the Mali armed forces took 1,000 dead ISIS and Al-Qaeda militants today?
Exactly. When you look at the flavor of Al-Qaeda, if you will, in Mali particularly, that's the JNIM, or it's an Al-Qaeda affiliate in that region of Africa. I've been there before. We've conducted joint combined exchange training as a Special Forces Green Beret in Africa. But when I look at the presence of the Wagner Group in Africa, now also referred to as the Africa Corps, and the Mali fighters, the thing is that when the United States and European nations such as the French interfere or interject or become part of these countries, we put on the perception of we're there for security forces assistance or freedom or self-governance, and really it's there as a facade to continue to take of their resources. And to your point, Mali should not be a poor country when you consider the natural resources of that land, but they are. Sure. So when I've seen Wagner Group operating in Syria, in other parts of the world, in Tajikistan, and when Wagner Group is there, they are committed to the partner that they are partnered with for the long run. We've seen Russia's strategy in this. Russia backed Assad all the way up until the day he was flown out of Damascus and taken to Moscow. We've seen that when the Russian operatives, such as the Africa Corps, are partnered and involved, they are committed, and they stay and they stand and fight with those that they are backing. Now, Russia's interest may also be for long-term resources and presence, but they also understand that in order to have that, the stability of a nation or the stability of the region is also important. Whereas I think U.S. foreign policy has become, or at least over the last 12 months, has been chaos, confusion, and disorder in order to take advantage of the situation, whereas Russia and China look to long-term stability for resource extraction over time, but they're willing to put skin in the game and stay and fight with their partners. You know, when the United States left Afghanistan, you know, we left so many of our partnered forces that stood with us and fought with us for 20 plus years high and dry, and we left them. And the world saw that. And I think that when we look at how Russia operates with their surrogate and paramilitary forces, they stay and they stand and they fight and they're present. And we saw that over the last couple of days, and especially going into last night with the response to the attacks that occurred over the last 48 hours.
Now, the big enchilada, Tony, is, of course, Iran. There are people who think, Larry was one of them, that the attack would already be on, that an invasion of Iran is virtually certain. I'm not so sure about that myself. There does seem to be an extraordinary amount of very circumloquacious, but nonetheless apparently rational talking going on. I cited the Foreign Minister Arakci, who just arrived here in Moscow, by the way. In the last 72 hours, maybe less, he was in Pakistan, left Pakistan, went back to Pakistan, went to Oman, and has arrived in Moscow. That kind of air miles is usually a sign that something is happening, something is moving. What do you think that might be?
Well, I do think that Iran, at their highest levels of government and representation, are very pragmatic. And they're looking at the situation in terms of how do they shore up their interests, and how do they shore up defense, and to see what may come of the U.S. response now that just yesterday Donald Trump made the proclamation that he's no longer going to send his son-in-law and Steve Witkoff. So Laurel and Hardy have stopped their Western Asia tour. They're not going over there anymore. So Donald Trump has pretty much signaled an end to negotiations, or a stop of talking, whereas Iran knows that Iran is here to stay. The Gulf nations and the other nations in the region understand that Iran is there to stay. And Iran is being very pragmatic in their approach to gaining not necessarily alliance right now, but at least tacit support in the effort of not joining the side of an alliance with the United States. And that's been pretty effective, because even up till now, the United States has not garnered anything resembling an alliance or a coalition, either in naval, air, or ground. So when we look at that approach to isolate the U.S., and really you can't really call Israel a very good partner, because they use this to attack Lebanon and continue attacks in Gaza and on the West Bank. So they're occupied with their parallel war. So really the United States stands alone, and Iran has done a very good job at the grand strategy level of isolating the U.S. politically, economically, and militarily. If we see it now, the United States is conducting a blockade of a blockade that didn't exist before the United States started this war. I've never seen that in history. That's a new one. I hope that's kept in the annals of naval history, that you blockade a blockade after you start the war to blockade something that wasn't blockaded. That's a new one. So the reason the the Iranian representation are making these trips and putting in those air miles is because they understand that they have to garner or reinforce the gains that they have. And though militarily, we know that Iran is not militarily overwhelming in terms of technology and modernization like the United States Navy or Air Force. But they do have a very robust asymmetric capability. And they do know they're going to stay in the fight. And they do know that they're not going to capitulate. And they do know that they're not going to just grovel on their knees and take a 15-point peace plan that puts them in a strategic, vulnerable position in the world. So they're shoring up their nation partners, or they're not really their partners, but their neighbors. They're shoring up their neighborhood, I think, is what we see from this. They're going to continue to sow the seeds of a negotiated settlement, even though the United States has signaled that the United States is no longer interested.
Of course, Donald Trump signals things all the time, and of course they're unsignaled within the hour, even sometimes within the same press briefing or speech. So it could be that Trump is bluffing, or it could be that he really means it. The signs are that the military brass in the United States are not at all keen on a ground invasion of Iran. Can you confirm that?
Oh, I can assure you that the U.S. military leadership, from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, whom I know personally, and have worked with personally when he was the deputy commander of the Joint Special Operations Task Force in Syria. I worked directly for him. So I know that when you consider the commander of CENTCOM, Bradley Cooper, you consider the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, they are not keen on a ground invasion because of the massive cost it will take in not only lives, but resources, and to gain and achieve what? 58 days ago, this war started 58 days ago in a wake up today. 8 weeks. We are approaching the 60-day mark, which will be Wednesday, which meets the War Powers Resolution Act that Congress should, by our Constitution, intervene. Is Donald Trump going to blow past that 60 days or ask for a 30-day extension? I think come Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to see the administration signaling for a 30-day extension. So I firmly believe that U.S. military commanders, the Joint Force Commander, who is the CENTCOM commander, the theater commanders, Army, Navy, Marines, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs are not keen on a ground war. However, I feel that Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, Steve Miller are pushing for a ground war. And what I believe will happen is somewhere in the middle, which unfortunately, when you dip just your toe in the acid, it can continue to erode the foot. So I'm fearful of what that dipping of the toe is going to be, because if that looks like a vertical envelopment or airborne assault or amphibious assault to take Qasem Island in the Strait, to seize the airfield, to have dominance over the passage, and or to move in and amphibious assault or seize control of Karag Island, it doesn't end there. It will expand. So I do think that military leadership is pushing back. We saw the firing of John Felon, Secretary of the Navy, this week. We do know that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs got into some standoff, or at least some argumentative confrontation with the president over the potential deployment or use of a nuclear capability. So I think that there is standing up in the Defense Department, and I hope that they will prevail in convincing the president that a ground war of any size, whether it's limited or expansive, will only lead to further failure. The U.S. has already lost this war strategically. It's already been lost. So are we gonna lose bigly, as Donald Trump would say, or are we going to negotiate and move on?
Well, that's of course what happened in the war he dodged 5 times in Vietnam. you started with your toe in the acid in the form of military advisors, and by the end you'd lost 58,000 dead American soldiers, hundreds of thousands either wounded physically or mentally, more Americans committing suicide who served in Vietnam than actually died on the battlefield. When you put your toe in acid, the acid is going to consume all of you.
Precisely. And through the global war on terror, my cohort, my generation that's fought through these wars, the statistics are frighteningly quite the same. The rate of suicides far outnumbers what we actually lost in combat. And when you now look at what we face, I do believe that even in this limited incursion of this 58 days of war, that we're going to have quite a few service members that are deeply disturbed, especially those aboard the warship that fired the Tomahawk missiles that killed 168 schoolgirls in Manab. That's got to weigh heavy on the soul. And for anyone aboard that ship that knows what happened, I think it will weigh heavy. But also, we're seeing reports coming out now from U.S. news, not just foreign news agencies where the U.S. likes to discredit it, but American news stations, that the bases in the region were obliterated, decimated, destroyed. Some of them wiped off the map. So the losses are much greater than we're being led to believe. And I think that those losses are going to incur damage to the military for years to come.
And the men on board the ships are not even getting a proper dinner. The rations I see have been photographed, and the weight loss of many of the sailors recorded. Finally, permit me a personal question, Tony, if you will. And I know that many people watching you, not just tonight, but so many times you've done us the honor of coming on the show. Many would be wishing that you would enter politics. You are the most eloquent and photogenic soldier I have ever interviewed. Have you thought about running for office?
So I actually am, George, here in North Carolina in District 13. I am running for the U.S. Congress to unseat the Republican incumbent. And the Republican incumbent in my district is a Israel First AIPAC receiving warmonger. And I am running against him. I'm running third party. I'm not running with the Democrats or the Republicans. And we stand a really good chance of winning. And I really look forward to serving my country once again under the oath of the Constitution and putting the people first. So I have put my name in the hat. I am running, and the good news is that I've already made it through the primaries. So going into the general election, I am on the ballot. I don't have to gain a certain number of signatures or petition. I am on the ballot. And North Carolina has made history before, and I think that North Carolinians are going to come out and we're going to make history again. And things need to change in the politics of our country. So I am running for the U.S. Congress here in North Carolina's District 13.
Well, it was jolly modest of you not to say so, and I apologize that I didn't know any of that. And I think I speak for everyone watching tonight. We definitely wish you every success. It would be a terrific breakthrough in American politics for your eloquence and bravery to be heard on the floor of the Capitol. Thank you very much, as always, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Aguilar, U.S. veteran and former worker at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Thanks for joining us again this evening. Let me take a quick break, and then we've got a legend, Donna in Panama. Let's hear what she has to say right after this break. His approval ratings are in the toilet. He won a huge mandate, well less than a year ago, and he's thrown it all away. He has an approval rating of just under 40% now, and a disapproval rating of all the others. There are no don't knows in the issue of Donald Trump. And so he has maximized the number of people who hate him or dislike him, and he has systematically undermined the voting base that formerly liked him. And I don't know whether that is because of his donors, because he's intellectually challenged, because it's of his age. I really don't know.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's go to the wonderful Donna in Panama on the subject of patsies and assassins. I'm definitely interested in what your take on this one is, Donna.
Well, I thank you, first of all, for the gracious compliment. You know I'm your biggest fan.
Thank you, man.
I agree with you and Tony Aguilar and Larry Johnson that it seems like this whole thing was staged. I agree with you. However, what I do not understand, and I've never understood, is assuming it was staged, and it also goes for most of the other assassinations that I know something about. How do you, as Larry Johnson said, convince somebody to do this, to get on a train with guns and knives, take a train all the way across the country, go into a hotel, and then, start shooting people running through a corridor of a hotel where a president... what's in it for them? What's in it? And I agree with you also about the Butler thing. And what about, this whole thing with Charlie Kirk? It's all so... what would be in it for them to risk their lives? Okay, this last one, he's not dead and apparently not even wounded. But I do not understand. You can't just say, oh, well, someone convinced him. What? What do you mean? Why? How? Did they say, we'll give you $2 million and we'll pay for plastic surgery and we'll get you a visa to live, overseas, anywhere you want, if you do this for us? How does this happen?
Well, I think that's what we used to call the $64,000 question. The answer is different in every case. In the case of Lee Harvey Oswald, I happen to believe that he wasn't involved in the crime at all, but that he was handpicked to be fitted up for it. I happen to believe he was very close to the president's car when the fatal shot was fired, and I believe that will be vindicated one day. But the other cases, Sirhan, for example, the man still in prison for murdering Senator Robert Kennedy on the eve of his winning the Democratic nomination to run for president in a kitchen in a California hotel. I understand, I haven't spoken to him obviously directly, that Sirhan's claim is that he was basically brainwashed. He was subject to mind control. What I'm certain of is that he did not fire any of the shots that killed Kennedy, which were, of course, fired from the back. And there is zero evidence that Sirhan was ever to his rear. In fact, the video film footage makes clear he was at all times in front, albeit he was firing a gun, but his bullets were all recovered, and none of them were recovered from the late Senator Kennedy. So every patsy is different. And for those who think, well, that's a bit far-fetched, brainwashing, hypnotizing someone, well, you know, the film The Manchurian Candidate was not far off the truth of the various intelligence agency-linked scandals of the use of drugs and the use of mind control that were prevalent for those my age. We've seen movies about it. We've seen documentaries about it. We've read books about it. And there's no reason to believe that these things have changed, Donna. And thirdly, you can always dispose of the patsy, as happened in Butler. We can't know the truth about Butler because the man who fired the shot and came within a tiny whisker of ending Donald Trump's life and political career was summarily executed. And so we may never know the truth about that. We can all be suspicious as to why no apparent effort was put in to investigating the case, discovering why and for whom this attempt to kill Donald Trump was made. And of course, we, in the Charlie Kirk case, we have probably the most obvious patsy of them all. A trans maniac, furry, for those of older age group. A furry is someone that sexually likes pretending to be an animal, a furry animal. The furry transvestite, transsexual angle is what they hoped would convict in public opinion the guy they got for the gig. But it turns out that the ballistics of that case and the presence of at least one other person firing, and then the pro-Israel activist who created a deliberate disturbance in the crowd by shouting, "I did it, take me, I killed him." All of these things add up to a situation where I doubt anybody in America believes the official FBI narrative about the killing of Charlie Kirk. Over to you, Donna. Well,
I mean, that's helpful, but so do you think that maybe the guy that was shooting in Washington the other night, was it last night? I guess last night. Do you think that maybe someone was giving him drugs? Someone was, how? Why? Someone befriended him? And do you think that he'll ever talk? Do you think he'll ever, wake up one day and say, "Hey, there was this guy, he befriended me, and I invited him over for dinner, and when I was in the kitchen, maybe he put some stuff in my drinks because I mean, how come none of this ever? I don't know how to explain it, but how?
You've raised the key questions, and of course, at this stage and at this distance, I cannot answer them. But I can think of ways that you could do it. If a guy's in a lot of debt, you can offer him. It would be cheap at the price. Look at the money that washes around the American political system. You could offer him millions of dollars and still come out ahead if that was your intention, to rebuild support for Donald Trump, to further cause a crisis in the society in the United States, to sharpen the culture wars that are already raging there. It would be worth your while spending a couple of million. So, I'd be looking at whether this guy was in debt or not, and how much money would have made a big difference to his life. I'm surprised that he was not killed. I'm suspicious that he wasn't, but I'm surprised that he wasn't. Like the guy in Butler, dead men tell no tales. So he could easily have been killed, perfectly justifiably. Nobody, not even me, would have complained if the FBI had killed him, but they didn't. So maybe there's some angle in the deep state that wanted him to do this and wanted him to stay alive, wanted to discredit the whole thing. Or maybe, as someone else said earlier in a message, that this was some kind of training exercise. It kind of looked like a training exercise to me, although how he avoided then being plugged and killed would be difficult to explain. I accept that. So no, I'm not crudely saying, Donna, that he was drugged or he was brainwashed or he was hypnotized or he was bribed, but I am saying that others have been. And the method exists to do any or all of those things, and they have been done before. I'm sure we'll continue, Donna, to think and talk about these things, but I better press on. God bless you, as always, for all your support. Now, once more, I want to thank the people who sustain the program and guarantee its independence, just as importantly. Special thanks to George J. Ashkar Jr. Talk about a regular donor, George. You are amazing. David Hall, Tony Plato, Jacqueline Biggs, and Alisa. A big thanks to all of you, and to all of you who are going to give at the end of the show on moats.tv, I'm perfectly sure. I'll probably close the poll. 45,000 people voted, didn't quite make it to 50, but it's totally overwhelming that people believe the Trump cartel is guilty of insider trading. Tom is in New York, wants to talk about Iran, and we want to hear him. Go ahead, Tom.
Hi, George. It's an honor to speak with you again. Manchester United is third place in the Premier League, so hopefully Champions League around the corner.
We're in the Champions League. We've made it. We've made it.
Yes, thank God. On a more serious note, I wanted to talk to you about Iran. Particularly, Professor Morandi talked about trying to stop the war. Charlie Kirk tried to stop the war with Iran. How many 31-year-olds would argue with the sitting president, President Trump, in the Oval Office of the White House against bombing Iran last year? Charlie Kirk argued more forcefully against the Iran war than anyone in the White House. In some ways, sadly, I consider Charlie a casualty of the war in Iran. I also wanted to raise a point of... thank you. I also wanted to raise a point that Iran has suffered from drought for years. General Wesley Clark noted that 7 countries would have their governments overthrown. Most, if not all, of those countries have experienced drought. Iran has accused the United States and Israel of using weather modification technology, specifically radar systems around the Persian Gulf that ionize the atmosphere to steer clouds away from Iran, to cause a decades-long drought that rendered Tehran nearly uninhabitable. They were down to 1% in the reservoirs at one point. Now, fast forward to recent events. According to Iran's embassy in Kabul, Iran destroyed the secret center for cloud seeding and weather manipulation in the United Arab Emirates during the war. Iranian reports that since Iranian drones destroyed these radar installations, record rains have returned to Iran, reservoirs have reached 100% capacity, and underground water sources are overflowing. And this goes back to the 70s. Zbigniew Brzezinski warned about weather modification that could be used for secret warfare. And there's a 1970s treaty against it, signed after Operation Popeye in Vietnam, but the proof that the technology exists and had been deployed. So I want to give Jimmy Dore a hat tip on this one. I do have some more information with regards to WBAI in New York City after the 2012 presidential election. I heard Michael Murphy, who's a documentarian and geoengineering expert. He had a documentary called What in the World Are They Spraying with regards to geoengineering. Now, Mitt Romney was leading in the last poll before the election. Then Hurricane Sandy hit the Northeast, and the polls flipped in favor of reelecting President Obama. Therefore, geoengineering has taken place in the United States as well. So I hope with this war, geoengineering ends in Iran.
Yeah, let's not, I mean, the Obama-Romney business is a highly contentious point. But everything you said up to that point, I intended to say, though less well than you have said it. In my monologue, I just ran out of time. I went over time. Rivers, lakes, gigantic floods are now raging in not just Iran, but in Saudi Arabia, in Turkey, in Iraq. Rivers that have never flowed for centuries are now brimful of water. It is snowing in Iran. For the first time in very many years, Iran had the drought that you described and was on the point of considering the evacuation of the capital, Tehran, because of a critical water shortage. And now there's water everywhere, and plenty of drops to drink. And the argument that it was the destruction of the U.S. radar facilities in the United Arab Emirates that has, if you'll forgive the pun, turned the tide, and the tide is now taken at its flux, is solving the water problem of the Persian Gulf, hopefully forever, is demonstrably proof that weather has been weaponized, that weather has been deployed as a weapon of war, as an act of war, causing untold harm, suffering, drought, and bad harvests, and all of the consequences. We can now conclude that that really happened. Now, if you'd said that even to me a couple of years ago, I would have put it down to some kind of conspiracy theory, some kind of obsession, peculiar, maybe true, but very unlikely to be true, and why don't you look at the real consequences, real causes? That would have been my reaction. I freely confess it. And now you've just said it, and I've just agreed with you, and no one could doubt either of us, given the empirical evidence that is tumbling like a waterfall in front of our eyes, is a health warning. Don't rule things out because at first glance they appear to be too good to be true or too crazy. Many thanks, Tom, a very clever man in New York, on the recent weather developments. Road Gent 123 says the BBC are already reporting a vague Iranian connection. Typical, really, I didn't know that. Genome Exploits 9906 says when Melania ducked down, her husband didn't bother to cover, protect her, as any husband would. Tells you all about their fake relationship. And D. Nice Carreno 4259 sends $5. Thank you for that, and says the most corrupt administration ever, led by Trump, the betrayer. And Lucasaid X says Hegseth is like Napoleon, firing his generals that dare oppose him. That's very cruel on Napoleon to compare him to Pete Hegseth. And Pesky Quiet Man 7593 says 14,000 people are watching this show, yet it's nowhere to be seen on the live stream feed. The powers that be are trying to silence the truth. Well, that much is true. David is in Swindon, and he wants to talk about Donald Trump. Go on, Dave.
Hello there. Yeah, we spoke many years ago. We used to talk about the beluga whale. Do you remember the KGB agent?
I do. Good to speak to you again.
And Nord Stream. Anyway, this is rolling me so much. I've been watching the bit where the guy runs across the lobby, through the guards, and then he gets shot or not shot. And I'm looking at the thing. It looks like, and that's supposed to be directly outside the ballroom, yeah? Supposed to be. Yeah. Supposed to be.
No. It's on. It was on the floor above, but he was certainly able to reach the ballroom if he had continued running and run through the other security details with the ease with which he ran through that one. Yeah,
that's right. Well, I was looking at those doors, because I believe that, looking at the layout of that hotel, there are 2 floors which are underground. You go down, and then you go down, and the ballroom is totally subterranean. Okay? Now, if you look, the bit that he runs past has got some, those glass doors that have push bars on to escape.
Yeah.
Well, surely they wouldn't be down there, underground. You can see the glass.
No, but that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean about this being the floor above. He would have had to go down 1 floor to get to Trump, but he was on his way. I mean, no one could have complained if he got 10 bullets in the back and then.
Yeah, and the other thing that it looks very unprofessional. I mean, the lobby looks where the men are. They're sitting around and standing around when he makes the breakthrough. It looks like one of those benches you used to have in the school gym. Is a lot across there. Yeah. They've got no, you know what I mean? He just runs through. They're still standing around, chatting. 2 of them are sitting on the ground. One guy's standing, and
Keystone Cops.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I agree with you. There's something really, really fishy going on that one.
But how do all these guys fire at a running figure?
Exactly.
And none of them hit him.
Mad.
It can only be that they intended to. It can only be that they intended to miss. Lovely to talk to you again, Dave.
Okay, then.
In
talk
Swindon,
to you soon. Bye-bye.
in England. Many thanks. Yeah, I hope so. Now, you can download the Moats podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. And you can listen to the weekly podcast via the moats.tv website. And once you've listened, please don't forget to leave a review and rate it. Now, tonight, we are in the top 10 for politics in Egypt, Uruguay, Bahrain, and Ghana. Wow, that's something. And we are in the top 30 for politics in the UAE, Jordan, Lebanon, and Sri Lanka. And we've got another legend on the line. It's May in Oklahoma. May, what do you make of it all?
George, my dear hero. You and Gayatri and your team are my heroes. First, I want to talk about 3 things real quickly. First thing, I would like to ask everyone to pray for the people of Oklahoma, and particularly Enid, Oklahoma. It was just about flattened by an F4 tornado the other night, and people are struggling just to dig out of there. The second thing is kind of minor, but I'm still going to bug you about it. I'm still looking for ringtones for Moats, because we all go around and sing your little jingle. The other thing,
I'll definitely do that. Thanks for reminding me.
The other thing is I have a Facebook page called Trump's Magic 8 Ball, and I post some of your questions and some extra ones on it. So I just want to encourage everybody to kind of look at it, comment, and join in together.
Where do you find that? Where do you find that, May?
You just do a search for Trump's Magic 8, the number 8 ball on Facebook. It's a page,
okay.
And if you can't find it, message me somehow. You guys have my number, and I'll send you the link. But
all right.
Tonight I'm asking your
All right.
question, is the Trump cartel engaging in insider trading? And it says, without a doubt.
I mean, I could even name the suspect, the chief suspect. I could at least tell you how tall he is. But we better not go further down that rabbit hole. May, God bless you. And everyone, go to Facebook, Trump's Magic 8 Ball. I'll do it myself and sign up. May, I've got another legend on the line. It's Erebos in New York on Starmer. Go ahead, Erebos.
Fidelitas facilitations to the mighty clan Galloway and the resident patriarch, George the Great Galloway, first of his name. And of course, shout out to the people that sponsor Moats, the mother of all talk shows, make it possible for me, May, and all the other callers and the brilliant guests to be on, so no underestimating that.
Yeah.
And of course, the Moats staff, the queen in residence, Jai the Magnificent, first of her name, well planted in life. But before I get on to care, deep fried care there, Starmageddon, the Secret Service has to be the worst presidential security detail, perhaps in any industrial modern country. I mean, these guys are the absolute worst. If you look up a list, not even AI is able to track how many failures and mishaps, and they just need to be disbanded and sent away. And you replace them with revolving units with the Marines. The Marines would do a much better job being on point and with security. It's like, when you come around them, it's like, man, am I going to die tonight? What's going to happen? They should just be sent away. I think they're there specifically to threaten and intimidate presidents should they ever stray into the parvenu or the purview of looking out for the working class. A quick thing about Bulgaria real quick. In 2014 or so, the EU cut off the ATMs and the banking access of Greece and Cyprus because they had this somewhat socialist party with Yanis Varoufakis and the rest of them. And they couldn't, and they basically broke them off at the knees. I think the same thing might happen to the Bulgarians. And I think a way they can deal with it is link their currency to gold and start using their own currency, and also get loans from China and Russia to cover their debt, to cover their national debt. Now, it's going to take a more than a brass neck. It's going to take a brass sack to have that done. It's going to take a lot of political courage, but it's something Bulgaria, I believe, can do. And, finally, because as Morpheus said to Neo in my favorite film of all time, The Matrix, time is always against us. Oh, yeah, and the Trump shooting thing, the thing I locked on, or I thought it was ridiculous from the moment I saw it. I was like, oh, not this again. For some reason, I got fixated on the SWAT guy who straddled the table, right? He was like near the butter dish, and he was like, do you want some salted nuts with your butter? It's like, what is he doing? He's just like sitting there, hanging out. The whole thing was a comedy, and to Donna's point, you get people. The FBI has an entrapment program where they find people that are mentally and emotionally disturbed, and it's not that hard to push them in the direction you want to go. But to finish off with Starmageddon, now, we all know of the Strait of Hormuz. It seems like Starmageddon, he has the Strait of Homos, as they would say in West Chelsea over here. It's these Ukrainian rent boys, and you're absolutely right to point out that there's no insight into these people at all. And if it were you, they'd be up and down. They'd be through the finest hairs on you with a fine-tooth comb, pulling up all kind of dirt just to ruin you. So he's got the Strait of Homos versus the Strait of Hormuz, and we'll see what comes of that. Looking forward to Gayatri the Gracious, first of her name. Thank you, Moats.
God bless you. Thank you, Erebos. They're all fixated on the Straits of Hormuz, but nobody seems to give a damn about the gays of Hormuz. Thanks to Robos in New York, the gracious Gayatri, the woman without whom the news would not be the news, has joined me. What's rattling, Gayatri?
So, 52 years ago, on 25th of April 1974, was the Carnation Revolution in Portugal, putting an end to 41 years of dictatorship, which was started by Antonio Salazar and continued by Marcelo Caetano. And this was known as the period of Estado Uno. Hardly a shot, though, was fired for this revolution. So within one day, they replaced the dictatorship with a democracy, basically. They put these carnation flowers in the rifles, and that's why this Liberation Day in Portugal is also known as Carnation Revolution. Now, the context of this practically bloodless revolution is very interesting for a then European colonial power as it was. So the then leader Caetano, he resisted the independence of its colonies in Africa. That is, of course, unsurprising, but the facts on the grounds was that Portugal at the time had a population of 10 million people, and 1 million out of them were serving the army, fighting the guerrilla movements in the African colonies. So that meant that 1 out of 10 was in the army, and practically everyone had a family member fighting and dying in these colonial wars. So 10,000 Portuguese soldiers died, 100,000 were injured. In the colonial side, 100,000 died in Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and Angola. And this was a very costly war, to summarize. Portugal at this time spent 2/5 of its state budget on these colonial wars, at a time where people who were living just outside the city, they didn't even have running water. So the state was grasping with quite some difficulties. And not to mention the people, million and a half people were fleeing Portugal for the poverty and to escape the proscription. Yeah, exactly. So what happened, these young soldiers in the colonies, they took matters into their own hands, and they basically organized a quiet revolution. And this is why it happens overnight, and mainly in Guinea-Bissau, because in that colony the Portuguese were facing heavy defeat already from the freedom movements known as the MPLA, which we discussed earlier. And this is where I want to raise and give attention to one of these Pan-Africanist leaders who hasn't been given the light he deserved, actually, Amilcar Cabral. He was the leader for the liberation movement in Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde, because he was both. He's also known by the name Abel Jassy for his leadership. Well, when he was studying in Lisbon, agriculture, which was very useful for him later on, he founded the Center for African Studies. Now, during the Estado Uno, labor unions and associations were not allowed. So this Center for African Studies, it functioned as it was a cover for his political activities under the guise of cultural events and activities. So he later founded the African Party for Independence in Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde, and of course was co-founding the MPLA. This was the Popular Movement for the Liberation of Angola. And he then got shot just before Guinea-Bissau was officially declared or recognized independent. So that is the African side to the Carnation Revolution, how that pushed Portugal into this revolution. But of course, we have visited the celebration of this revolution many times during the Avante Festival, and perhaps you want to say a bit more on the Portuguese side.
I'm glad you brought this up, and you brought back a lot of memories. I was, as I said to an earlier caller, heavily involved in these struggles because of my work with the ANC in South Africa. I was traveling regularly to the frontline states, particularly Lusaka and Zambia. I met many of the top leaders of the liberation movements that were struggling against Portuguese colonialism, but I also have a long and loving relationship with Portugal. I actually was in Portugal in the August, so when the revolution was barely 3 months old. And quite a remarkable moment in history it was. The tumult, the revolutionary fervor, it was like Petrograd in October of 1917. It was people marching up and down, people leafleting. I remember thinking that when they did hold elections, there was a group called the MRPP that were bound to win them because they had the best murals and they had covered every square inch of public buildings with their slogans and their murals. In the end, of course, they got less than 1% of the vote, which taught me a valuable lesson. Walls don't vote. And because you've got the sexiest propaganda doesn't mean that you're going to win. But there was a moment, lasted more than a moment, between 1974 and 1981. It was distinctly possible that Portugal could become a socialist country. And certainly the West feared that it would, and that Spain would go the same way. They used the same method in both countries to avoid that. They exhumed the idea of socialism, social democracy, as an anti-communist counterweight, and they allowed the Socialist Party in both Spain and Portugal to come to power, precisely because neither of them were actually socialist parties. They only carried the name. They were as socialist as Keir Starmer or Tony Blair, but it worked for them. But that revolution was started by the broadcast of a banned patriotic song that was well known to be banned in Portugal. And so when people heard it first thing as the radio opened, they knew that something big was happening, and indeed it did. And so God bless all those who defeated fascism in Portugal, and all those who've made Portugal such a wonderful and beautiful country. I haven't been able to visit you for a little while, but I hope to do so soon. So, all hail the Portuguese Revolution. Good night from Gayatri and me. I hope you've enjoyed listening, watching the show as much as we have enjoyed making it. Two cracking guests. You could not get two better guests anywhere in the media, anywhere in the world. And I thought the monologue wasn't bad either. And some of the calls were simply terrific. So if you agree, see me again on Wednesday for the mother of all talk shows. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.